Time magazine says Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson probably has the hardest job in America. Last week, he tried to summarize that job during an hour-long speech at the Wilson Center in Washington. Diane Cho has more.
Delivering his final State of Homeland Security address at the Wilson Center, Secretary Jeh Johnson began by highlighting his agency's accomplishments.
It's the nature of our business in Homeland Security that no news is good news. But no news is very often the product of the hard work and extraordinary, courageous effort our people put in every day to keep the American public safe.
Johnson says last fiscal year, TSA officers screened 695 million passengers and seized 2,500 firearms from carry-on bags. This after a report by ABC News last year, which showed undercover agents were able to sneak in fake weapons through TSA checkpoints nearly 96% of the time.
As many of you know, in May of last year, a certain classified DHS Inspector General's test of TSA screening at 8 airports reflected a dismal fail rate and was leaked to the press.
Johnson also took on topics like the need to improve employee morale. DHS consistently finished at or near the bottom of federal employee viewpoint surveys.
It takes time to turn a 22-component workforce of 240,000 people in a different direction. Though the overall results last year were still disappointing, we see signs of improvement.
As for its counterterrorism efforts,
given the prospect of the terrorist-inspired attack in the homeland, we have intensified our work with state and local law enforcement. Almost every day, DHS and the FBI share intelligence and information with joint terrorism task forces, fusion centers, local police chiefs, and sheriffs.
Johnson acknowledged weaknesses in the National Terrorism Advisory System. It's a system DHS never used.
It consisted of just 2 types of alerts, elevated and eminent, and depended on the presence of a known, specific, and credible threat. This does not work in the current environment. So in December, we added a new form of advisory, the NTAS Bulletin, to the existing alerts.
It's Johnson's last year at the department. 2017 will mark a new administration.
I intend to make every day count. The former president of my alma mater, Morehouse College, used to tell his students, "We only have just a minute, but eternity is in it, and it's up to us to use it." With Deputy Secretary Ali Mayorkas as my partner, we will push an aggressive agenda to the end.
For Government Matters, I'm Diane Cho.
Let's pick things up there with Security Matters. Joining me, Marc Pearl, President and CEO of the Homeland Security and Defense Business Council. Marc, let's start with a little history lesson. Is the State of Homeland Security addressing something new? Why are these speeches important?
Well, it's always important to share a message. It's always important to educate the public, the employees within the government as to what the state of Homeland Security is and to help define it as well.
That's a good point. And Diane's report pointed out some of the challenges DHS faces, like TSA screening, employee morale, and holes in the Einstein system. You watched Johnson's speech. What did he leave out?
Well, first of all, it's very hard to cover, even in an hour presentation, the entire state of an important agency like the Department of Homeland Security. I think that if there was one thing that I'm hopeful that the Secretary will address in his last year, similar to the way that Secretary Chertoff did in his last year with the Bush administration, is to articulate a vision of what Homeland Security and what the Homeland Security enterprise is, which is beyond just the 4 walls of DHS. What the vision of cybersecurity, for example, may look like beyond just what the programs are. And those are some of the things that we're looking forward to the Secretary and his team addressing over the next year before they hand over the keys to the new administration.
More on that, Marc. We've been following an ongoing budgetary concern here on Government Matters about the difference between cybersecurity and IT spending. There's plenty of overlap here. Did Johnson address that concern?
To a certain extent, but not really. quickly. I think that the nature of what the digital services platform is, what Einstein is going to be, what he called the cybersecurity advisor team, expert advisor team, are all programs that are important, but a vision with regard to cybersecurity and how we get both industry as well as even other agencies involved. It's not just under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security. It involves agencies like NSA, FBI, and many other agencies that have to embrace the concept of cybersecurity, as well as what they're going to implement in every single federal agency across the entire horizon.
Now, you're exactly right about that. And Homeland Security's relationship with the business community is at a critical juncture. Just this week, Apple announced it will fight a court order to assist the FBI in hacking an iPhone. How does this relate to DHS?
Well, it relates to all of the federal government and its relationship with industry. We need to develop, and to a certain extent, the Secretary was talking about the concept that what he's doing is more than just software, it's about people. And I would just take that a step further, that we need to build trusted relationships with everyone. That goes to the morale within the federal government space, but it also goes to the industry. If there are trusted relationships, then you don't have to go to a court to, in essence, get and extract what's in the lockbox of any individual company. We need to have industry and government working better together in a better quality relationship that will in fact allow everyone to leverage their creativity, their innovation, and their expertise so that government can take full advantage of what industry has to offer.
Mark, before you go, let's talk legacy. How do you grade Secretary Johnson's tenure, and what does the next secretary need to carry out his vision for DHS?
That's a good question. I think that legacy, as I think President Bush, George W. Bush said, is going to be determined well after he was out of office. There is no question that part of what Secretary Johnson and his team calls pouring cement into their programs and their process is important. Do they have what they've tried to achieve? Has it been baked in? The legacy of what Secretary Johnson articulated during his State of the Homeland Security is whether or not on January 21st, 2017, the processes that he's put into place, his unity of effort, both as a capital U and a capital E, as well as a small u and small e, what he's articulated in terms of his acquisition, innovation in motion. These are important steps forward. Whether or not they're going to be accepted, embraced, and continued by the next administration is something that we all hope and see, and we hope that he will have more opportunity over the next year to articulate a vision beyond just what the programs are that have been put into place.
All of these points well made. Marc Pearl, President and CEO of the Homeland Security and Defense Business Council. Thanks, Mark.
Good to be with you, Morris.